All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Golfers Anonymous podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Noah. And if this is your first time joining us on the show, I'll give you a quick overview about what you can expect from this episode and all the other ones we have up on the page right now. So essentially, the reason I started this show is that I found whenever I was at a bar, restaurant, any type of social gathering, and I found even one person that played golf, automatically we had endless things in common, endless things to talk about. Maybe we would play golf in the future. You got a friend for the night, maybe even a friend for life coming out of that. And it's because golf is this very interesting game where people don't necessarily just play golf or just watch the PGA Tour. They're oftentimes addicted to all the different facets of this really awesome game. So what I did is I've just started out interviewing a bunch of my buddies that play golf. And now I've been fortunate to get to talk to some really, really cool people about the game we love. So without further ado, my guest this week is Jeff Eisenband. And Jeff, typically how I have folks introduce themselves on the show is we'll do your name, how long you've been playing golf, and then your current handicap.
All right. And hopefully, I know you're talking to new viewers. Hopefully, I'm bringing some people in. But Jeff Eisenband, I have been playing golf. I'm 31 and a half years old. I would say probably since age 5. So let's put that around 26 and a half years. And my current handicap, I'm not proud of it, but it's been trending around a 13. Cracked around 11 or slightly better when I was playing high school golf, but I've never been a star. I've never put in enough time, but every year I say it's going to get better. So this year it's going to get better.
All right. I love it, man. I mean, hey, it's January. This is the time for goals and New Year's resolutions. So I believe in you this year, Jeff. But let's start out where, go back to age 5. What did picking up clubs for the first time look like? How did you originally get introduced to the game?
My family is just fanatical. My dad, a diehard golfer. I would say not necessarily didn't grow up on golf. Didn't really play golf as a kid. Picked it up really in college and played a lot in his 20s after college. He's from Long Island. Lived in Queens after college, so he tells me stories about going to Bethpage, not just Black, but the Bethpage courses, and really honing his game, self-teaching his game out there. And so when he had kids, he wanted to get us out there early. I don't think he was trying to be Earl Woods, but trying to make sure that we learn the game at a young age. So golf was something that I was always in my life. All the way back in elementary school, hitting those early checkpoints as a kid. I remember playing one hole, playing 2 holes, playing your first par 5, reaching the green in your first par 3. And, as I got, as I went on, I had that kid golf bug. I'd say, not to get ahead on your questions, Noah, but I'd say there have been waves where golf has been a big part of my life, and there have been times where it hasn't. Right now, it's a massive part of my life. But I think that could be said for a lot of people who play golf and a lot of people in terms of where their game goes.
Yeah, you hit on an interesting point about the waves of the golf, bug, because I can relate to that 100%. Like when I feel like when I first picked it up, in I think probably 12, 13 years old, super into it at the beginning of high school. I didn't play in high school, but spent summers playing and into college. And then, oddly enough, when everybody else was getting really into golf during the pandemic, that's when I stopped playing altogether. Like I was just really busy doing some other things and golf just didn't really fit in. And then 3 years ago, completely fell back in. But tell me a little bit about some of those waves for you. What has made golf come in and out of your life?
Yeah, like I said, when I was a kid, big part of my life. I have this from 6th grade. We had our first project in middle school. Like, you're introducing yourself to kids that you've never met, is kind of a timeline of your life. And I did a golf course in 6th grade. And I remember looking back like that. Listen, let me tell you something. Not cool to do like a golf thing in 6th grade. Like, that was not cool at the time. But I think about me as a kid and really being into it and thinking that I'm going to be this great prodigy in golf, right? And then things kind of change as I go on. I end up playing a lot of baseball, and in late middle school, early high school, didn't play as much golf. But then I decided to quit baseball, and I played golf my last year of high school. I was one of two seniors on the team. They voted for me as captain before I even played a match. I was like, "Uh-oh, how, this is not good." But I really had it for that. There was a 2-year period there where I was really back in. Then I went to college at Northwestern in Chicago. Didn't bring my clubs out there. Not a lot of time to play golf in Chicago unless you're there during the summer. And, in college just wasn't playing as much golf. My game definitely took a step back. And then since, after college and really around, I'd say age 25, and then working in the sport, dug really hard back in. And that's where I stand right now.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I wish I would love if you could go, obviously Facebook is much different now than when it originally came on the block. But I look back very fond, and I swear I'm going to get back to golf with this. But I look back on like old Facebook very fondly when it was just like a timeline, a combination of like Instagram, Twitter, all in one. And I wish someone could just like have like a golf wall, of like the evolution of your game in golf, courses you've played, memories, like ups and downs and your interest in it. I feel like that would be very interesting to look back on, because everyone's is very unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's different times in your life, like we're saying, where you feel like golf matters, and also because golf can go with how you're playing. I think that kind of contributes to how much you're playing. I remember even times in my life where I'd pick up Tiger Woods PGA Tour and play a lot and be like, okay, now I really want to get back out on the golf course a little bit more. So it's different things that contribute. We can definitely get into the professional game a little bit, because I do think that people, their waves might go with how much golf they watch. And that's why I think the professional game maybe matters more than some people think. But yeah, it's been a ride.
So yeah, I think that's a good segue into, what you do professionally, and that is working in the golf broadcasting industry. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that in the first place.
Yeah, it's like I said, golf in waves. And so after college, I worked for a website called thepostgame.com, which was the Yahoo Sports site, and I did a lot of different sports. And whenever there was something big with golf, especially coming through New York, the President's Cup in 2017, the PGA Championship at Baltusrol in 2016, whenever there was something going on, I kind of jumped in and made that, that's going to be my beat for a few weeks or a month or whatever it may be. And I just felt this connection with, I know the game, I've played the game, I'm more excited than other people to watch the game, and definitely got a sense from people where it was, oh my, this 20-something-year-old knows golf. Well, I was also doing esports as another category that I was doing, and I was getting old in my late 20s. Golf I was coming into from a media perspective. And so I got an opportunity after I went freelance broadcasting to do a couple daily fantasy golf shows, one with DraftKings a little bit, one with MSG Networks, golf.com. And I ended up using those clips to send a reel to the tour. Kind of right place, right time. PGA Tour Live, which for those who don't know is all the streaming coverage of PGA Tour events, was on NBC Sports Gold, but was about to leave to ESPN Plus. And they were looking to really increase their roster of play-by-play broadcasters. And I got a couple test runs, got a couple opportunities, and all of a sudden now we're talking, I don't know when you're going to put this out, but it's Amex week right now, 2025. So go back to 2022, 3 years ago, that was ESPN Plus making its big 4-stream debut. I was on featured holes for that opening day, and that's been a major part of my life for the last few years, doing broadcasting for PGA Tour Live on ESPN Plus. And then this past fall, and really more so as the year's coming on, in 2025, I'm going to do a lot more work for SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio, broadcasting live golf. So we're talking Thursday of Amex week. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. Going to kind of pop in, shadow a little bit on the ground for Amex in Palm Springs. And then next week, I will be on the ground for the first time as a on-course walker for PGA Tour, SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio for the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines. So it's coming fast and furious, and I'm excited to not just go to a remote studio this year in Ponte Vedra Beach, which is awesome for PGA Tour Live, but I'm actually going to be able to get between inside the ropes and actually on the course for a series of events this year.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I definitely have endless questions about, kind of how the operation of actually like producing golf works. But to rewind a little bit even further, like why broadcasting? Like how did you get into broadcasting in the first place? What did that look like?
I mean, it's something that like I was a little kid in elementary school watching sports, not just golf, but commentating to my family sitting there, and something that media journalism was always something that I was into. I always wanted to work in sports, and high school, wrote for the school newspaper, ended up anchoring the school news, ended up broadcasting a variety of uh, varsity sporting events for public access television in my town in Larchmont, Mamaroneck, New York, for those who know, in Westchester County. And then I went to Northwestern as a journalism student and called as many events as I possibly could. Took a little bit of an obscure route in terms of I decided I didn't want to do the small market minor league baseball or small market TV news reporter sort of thing. I kind of saw the world going very digital, and so I wanted to get to a website that I could work at in New York and not just write, but also be able to do some on air social media work. And this was almost a decade ago now. I graduated college in 2015, and I remember thinking what was new media then is now probably considered archaic to Gen Z. But talking about things on the internet, on air, being able to tape and post something was a big deal that people were still figuring out. So I kind of took that route, and then, like I said, after sending my tape to the PGA Tour, getting an opportunity to broadcast for PGA Tour Live, I got this kind of newfound opportunity to get back into what I really loved, which was doing on-air broadcasting. And I mentioned esports. I also did some broadcasting for the NBA 2K League, which was the NBA Esports League, and some broadcasting in golf esports for the DP World Tour. I actually have been broadcasted some of their events in World Golf Tour in the past from Copenhagen and from Dubai. So don't let anyone tell you that golf esports won't send you around the world.
Yeah, seriously, man. But do you ever miss doing the other sports not golf related?
I do, and I still don't think I still think because golf at points can be seasonal. It's a tiptoe dance sometimes, but I really don't want to rule out doing other sports as well. I look at someone like Jim Nance, right? He's doing the NFL in the fall, was
Yeah.
doing March Madness for a long time. Dan Hicks has done Notre Dame football in the past. He does the Olympics. He's done Roland Garros. It's not
Tarico.
exactly Terry Gannon's doing figure skating. I think that there's a lot of opportunities, but like we said, for me, golf is what I've really found to be my domain right now, and so I'm leaning into that, and I love it, and I get animated, and like I said, we're talking right now. I'm just revved up and ready to get back into it in 2025. I got married, went on my honeymoon in the fall, so I was able to pass time a little better, but
Right.
the fall it lags for me, because I want to get back out there and get back on the mic.
Yeah, well, congrats on all the success so far, and the wedding in the fall that you mentioned. I've always been very, I mean, everybody's impressed by Jim Nance, but all those guys who can context switch between multiple sports, sometimes on back-to-back days, it's just I've always been so impressed by how they're able to do that and have such depth of knowledge in so many different areas.
Yeah, I mean it can be a challenge at points. Golf is very different than other sports. But I tell people, like, people think, okay, it's a little bit slower. Well, not necessarily, because you're whipping around. Now you're not actually, if you're a football announcer, you're watching the entire game from the booth. If you're watching as a golf announcer, you're watching a lot of things on a monitor because you can't see the entire course at
Right.
one time. So that's a little different. You're relying on people on the ground, you're relying on analysts, and the 101 that I talk to people about, people who are becoming golf broadcasters, who are becoming play-by-play hosts in golf, you're not necessarily going to get the call the same way that other play-by-play announcers, like Jim Nance, is going to call every piece of the action for an NFL game. And then Tony Romo is going to step in and talk about things in between plays. In golf, it could be totally different. The host sets everything up. The on-course walker is on the course setting up what they see on the shot. They're usually a former player on TV. And then the analyst is going to take the reaction shot at the reaction as that ball lands. The first piece is going to come from the analyst, except for the 18th hole. That's it. So when you think about calls, I like to break this down as 17 at the Players Championship. Everyone thinks about that Tiger Woods better than most putt. Well, who's calling it? It's Gary Koch and Johnny Miller, not Dan Hicks, who's sitting right there and is going to pick everything up after. But Dan Hicks doesn't have the live call of that. That's Gary Koch's hole. Johnny Miller is the analyst. If you go to, say, Tiger's chip at 16 at the Masters 2005, who's calling that? Not Jim Nantz. Vern Lundquist has the call, who's the 16th tee announcer, 16th hole tower announcer. It's a little different because Vern actually is a journalist by trade, but usually we're talking about guys like Frank Nobilo and Ian Baker Finch who are in the towers for CBS. So then you think about those winning putts on 18 at the Masters, all Jim Nantz. Tiger Woods' putt at Torrey Pines 2008, 18th hole to send it to a playoff, that's Dan Hicks. So the 18th hole, play-by-play announcers in a major championship, in a PGA Tour event, they're taking that. But they're not necessarily calling the highlights, the play-by-play action necessarily during the entire course of a round.
Right. That's interesting, dude. I can already tell I'm gonna love this conversation. But that's really interesting. I've never even picked up on that. Why is that? Do you know?
I mean, it's a little bit of just the nature of how the sport goes in terms of, like I said, you're not there as the host. So first of all, that tower announcer or that walker who's walking with the group is incredibly important because they're actually seeing the lie. They're seeing the ball flight in a way that the host back in the studio is taking things the same way that you're watching things at home, right? It's on the same monitor. So it's become, it's a little bit more real to have that walker take it and then the analyst kind of reacting the same way that, like I said, at the end of an NFL play, Tony Romo is going to take that. It just happens that because of golf, a lot of times no one's saying anything when the ball's in the air, right? So then that first reaction, if you're watching a guy hit into a par 3 on the 13th hole, unless it's really a hole in one, a lot of times that first reaction is going to come from the analyst. It's not necessarily going to come from the host.
Got it. Wow, that is really interesting to think about. So now take me into a day in the life of your work. So you're getting ready to go to work, to go to PGA Tour Live, or even, you said in a couple weeks you're going to be walking out there with the players. Like how are you preparing to go out there and so that you have the most information or so that you're the most prepared as possible?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is no matter how much I prepare, I always feel like there's something missing, right? Because golf is such a big, grand sport. You might have, 150 players in one field, and you don't know what's going to happen. So you're preparing for the best you can. Obviously, at PGA Tour Live, a lot of what we do is featured groups, featured holes. So, if I know that I'm just watching 4 holes all week, 4 par 3s, or I know that I'm going to watch the same 2 groups on Thursday and Friday, I can really hone in and focus on those groups. But the biggest thing that I'm trying to think about is what is the viewer not going to know, or what can I add that the viewer may not be aware of? So, it's a lot of statistical research, right? How does this player play this course? What's their past? What can I add in terms of context that the viewer can say, oh, that's something that's really good for me to know that I'm not going to, it adds to what I'm watching here. A lot of it is reactionary though. So it's preparation in terms of, hey, what's happened on this hole in the past? What can we add to talk about it? What could happen if these two guys are, up against each other come Saturday and Sunday? Do they have history? The biggest research that you can do, which I've learned, is just watch golf. And I've had so many conversations with my wife, now wife. She's never been a wife Now she's my wife while I'm broadcasting, but she's
There you
never
go.
in the past. She wasn't my wife when I would get ready. And she would say, "Why are you nervous? Why are you anxious? All you did like last Saturday and Sunday was watch golf." I go, "All right, you're right." Because I think that's the important part, to know what's going on and what you're doing. It's not just golf broadcasting. I tell people this: if you want to do anything in life, you need to become an expert in it first. And so if you want to work in golf or become a golf broadcaster, you need to put in some hours of, whether it be watching golf, researching, reading, learning about the industry that no one's going to pay you for, but that's
Right.
going to give you some context into what you're doing. So that's the biggest start to things. And then if you can add in some unique insight, whether it's from research or, like you said, I'm going to be on the ground for radio. If it's something I can grab from a guy on the range, from an agent, from a coach who I talk to, then that's just icing on the cake. But the baseline is the most important thing.
Got it. That makes sense. And you bring up that interesting piece on becoming an expert in whatever you want to do. And like you said, you're spending so much time watching golf, researching. Are you spending time, and maybe I don't know if you still do this, but maybe if you used to do it, like just practicing being a broadcaster, like throwing on a old tape on mute and just kind of going through it that way, like honing your craft in that way?
I don't do that. Maybe I should. But what I will do is, if I'm watching golf, especially, Golf Channel, CBS, NBC, things that I don't currently do but would like to do, just listening and kind of imagining, what would I say in this situation? What are they saying? What can I take from this? Legitimately taking notes while watching is the biggest thing that I think is important for me. And then it is watching back the best clips, the best footage. I mentioned that Dan Hicks call in 2008 U.S. Open 18th hole. Tiger Woods makes the birdie putt at Torrey Pines to send the tournament to a playoff. Back then, in 18-hole playoffs, they play 19 holes the next day.
I wish they still did that.
But so that's right. Dan Hicks's call is expect anything different. You still hear people reference it 17 years later. But the biggest thing for me is, if you watch that clip, Dan Hicks is talking up until the moment Tiger takes the putt. And the reason that's important is because Tiger shuffles his feet a couple times. But what I would imagine is, Dan Hicks has been watching Tiger obviously all week. He's been watching him for the last decade, and he knows Tiger's triggers for when he's
Right.
about to putt and when he's getting ready. And that's important because he doesn't leave too much dead air before the putt, but he also gets out before the putt is struck. And that's where that drama builds. So a player, for example, Patrick Cantlay, is a player who I've called a lot of featured groups for, and I know his shuffle. I can't even explain it, but I know that when he first stands over the ball, that putt isn't coming yet. And there's going to be at least two shuffles, and you can tell when he essentially has a trigger of the putter that he's about to actually putt. He might not even know it, but you kind of learn that timing. Daniel Berger is a player that, it's a little bit random, but Daniel Berger's been in a lot of featured groups, not as much the last couple of years, but when I first started at PGA Tour Live, he puts down the golf ball on his ball marker, stands over the putt, looks like he's about to take the putt, then comes back and takes his ball marker off, and then steps into the putt. I've seen broadcasters who don't know that think that he's about to go, and now they need to kill another 10 seconds because he steps back and looks at the putt one more time. So you kind of learn those tendencies with players, especially. I'm sure it's the same with baseball broadcasters. They know what pitcher triggers are and batters and stuff like that. But for golf, every player has these small little bits that you kind of catch on to.
Yeah, they're definitely. I can totally see there being a real rhythm to it, or even not with putting. I'm sure even with just like full swings and everything like that, it's understanding someone's pre-shot routine. Do you have a favorite player to call? I mean, I'm sure obviously Tiger's at the top of that list, but
Well, I haven't done that yet. So
who are some guys that you love, broadcasting over?
I mean, I just want to say, Spieth is so interesting because you feel the crowd even if you're not there. I think I felt it sitting in a studio hundreds of miles away, you feel, we have, obviously we have the hot mics out there. So you hear him and Michael talking, you hear the fans, you hear the reaction. If he hits a great shot, the fans go crazy. If he hits a poor shot, the fans are devastated. Rory's, I know we talk about Tiger being the needle in golf, and he is in a way that we won't see maybe in our lifetimes, but Rory and Spieth, putting the two of them in that, they still drive fans to the golf course and to watch and to care. And obviously a lot of players do also, but those two players just jump out in terms of like, if I think if we see a Spieth renaissance again, he's still, I'm a 93 birthday. He's a 93, Justin Thomas, Xander. I'm part of this, Bryson. I'm part of this collective unit of, I'm not necessarily on the golf course, but I'm part of the crew. That, if Spieth has another sort of 2 to 3 year run where he catches it, you're going to see golf in a frenzy. It's with all due respect to Scotty Scheffler, who's doing incredible historic things right now. If Spieth was doing that, you would hear people start to make more Tiger comparisons, more Rory comparisons, because people want that so bad.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. Like even in the content I make, like I personally, I've never been a huge Spieth fan. People who listen to this show have probably heard me slander him before. But whenever I do that, I have people in my comments just like berating me, like, we're here with Spieth forever. Like people love the guy. Honestly, I think more than people love Rory. To your point, it's kind of second behind Tiger in many ways. And on that note of like, just the fans in general, do you ever get the line blurred between broadcaster and fan? Like how does that dynamic work?
It's a good question. I think with golf, it's always a little bit easier because it's not a team sport, right? So, and because Tiger's made it so easy, everyone's a Tiger Woods fan. Everyone grew up a Tiger Woods fan. That's accepted. And then, it's not, there's no real blatant favoritism after that. I think that that's the nature of the sport, right? It's the good and bad. If golf was more, if you had people who had more of a spiritual fandom, like fans have to the Green Bay Packers or the New England Patriots or the New York Giants, like, would that drive golf in a different way? Maybe, but it's also why anyone can show up to a golf event and feel like they're invested. They don't have to feel like they're alienated, like they don't have a team. It is easy to turn on every event and be a part of everything as opposed to just focusing on your teams.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And I know, and one of my last questions on the broadcasting side of things, tell me your favorite, I guess, tournament you've done, or your favorite moment that you've broadcasted over, and then maybe a tournament that you haven't done that you would, love to be a part of moving forward.
Well, the good news is from the PGA Tour side, I've done a lot. Now, I haven't been on the course for most of those, like I said. But for example, I'm about to call the WM Phoenix Open for the 4th time from a studio in Jacksonville, far away from Phoenix. But the first year of ESPN Plus, now almost 3 years ago, I was calling the 16th hole when Joel Damon and Harry Higgs took off their shirts.
That's
and
awesome.
We were talking about it when they were coming up because we knew that on Twitter they had talked about it. Would it really be a thing? And it just happened, and it was pure chaos. And I wish I nailed the call, but I didn't. I kind of let things breathe a little bit. I was working with John Rollins and Daniel Chopra. They yelled a little bit about what was going on. We thought it was crazy. And then there's kind of a quietness as they're walking off. And I try to say, and that was for 2 pars. And I say 2 pars. Like I stumbled. I think I was so into it. And I wish I could have that back because I was trying to think of just something subtle to mention that, like, in all of the chaos that we had seen at that point, I'd actually called Carlos Ortiz, had a hole-in-one just a few groups before them on Sunday. And Sam Ryder had the hole-in-one the day before. It wasn't for a hole-in-one. It wasn't for any birdies. Joel Damon and Harry Higgs. Harry Higgs had a par save, got up and down, and that's why they took their shirts off. So that was awesome. I think the second part of your question was, what would I love to call? I mean, obviously the cliche would be the Masters, but I think, in my mind, and I try not to be shy about this, calling a major championship in some sort of way is the next layer of my career. That doesn't mean calling on NBC or CBS on Sunday, but there's a lot of featured groups, a lot of ancillary content that goes in to the live broadcasting for these major championships. And it's basically what I do for PGA Tour Live already. And I want to get the call to be on site, whether it's this year at Oakmont, at Quail Hollow, at Augusta. I don't know if I'll get the call for Royal Portrush, but to experience that. And I'll put the Ryder Cup in that group because it's at Bethpage Black. Ryder Cup isn't technically a major, but that's the next level that I want to get to. It's going to be in my backyard coming up, so I'm hyped for that. But I would love to actually be a part of it, and actually call the action, unbiased, of course. It's the U.S. against Europe.
Yeah, that's what I imagined, your answer would be, but you never know if there's like some random event you had marked on your calendar.
It kind of was like the wheels were turning in my head because I've been saying major the last couple of years, and then I was like, oh wait, right, the Ryder Cup is here.
I was talking about this with my last guest, how you rarely see these big golf tournaments go to like a true sporting capital of the United States. Like obviously you had LA, but there was the issues with, not many fans actually being there. You had the Country Club, which, it's just outside of Boston, gets pretty rowdy there. But, Bethpage, I think, is going to be a level we haven't really seen in a little bit.
I am excited. I know people have talked about, will it be too rowdy? There's no such thing as too rowdy in my mind. I think there's a misconception about New York fans, which the thing about New York fans is we are good, knowledgeable sports fans. This is not just, it's like, look, we talked about Phoenix, and I love the WM Phoenix Open, but it's different when it's, ASU kids having a good time on Saturday and Sunday versus fans of golf who are going to feel like they're part of the team in a good way, cheering for Team USA and giving the US some sort of home course advantage. They're there to see Team USA win at the Ryder Cup, not just for debauchery.
Right. That is very true. I like to put, the Philly, New York, and Boston fan in that bucket of, very rowdy but not out of control. Well, maybe Philly, but
we can agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah. But you brought up the majors and comparing them to, the work you've done so far with PGA Tour Live. Can you peel back the curtain a little bit, and feel free to not say no, don't give away all the secret sauce, but how does the broadcast like level up at a major compared to just a normal PGA Tour event? At least kind of what you can say about it.
It's a little bit different in terms of it's similar in terms of, like we said, featured groups, featured holes, extra content if you want to focus one particular area. I think fans know the Masters you can just watch everything happening at Amen Corner. You can watch everything happening at holes, I think it's 4 and 5, and 1 through 3 have their own stream. So there's a little bit more of a focus there. And I think just, that the fans are watching a little more religiously from the moment that first ball is played until the last moment. And look, let's not hide that there are a lot of fans that are watching from start to finish because they have a lot of money in today's day and age on, at risk on these players. I've told some former players who are like, who's watching us call the 13th hole on a Friday morning, watching this group. And I'm like, there are people out there. This is what they have money riding on this, and this is their opportunity to actually see the players that they're betting on. So they're going to be locked into this. You never know who's watching. It's not just friends and family.
So I guess to take the conversation a little bit outside of exactly your work and maybe more about professional golf on the whole, like tell me anything you're really looking forward to as a fan in 2025, this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a fan perspective, I think golf, I think the PGA Tour is in a really great place when it comes to storylines in terms of Scottie Scheffler's that guy, right? Who's going to try to knock him down from that throne? And there are a lot of suitors There are the guys who've been there before, the Rorys, the JTs, the Hidekis. We saw right off the top, Spieth. And then there's this group of Hovland, Morikawa, Ludwig, can some of these guys that are molding into form, can they be the next generation to take things over? It's a Ryder Cup year, so that's going to be a storyline throughout. Just how badly these guys want to make it. Like we've talked about, I work for the PGA Tour. That's my focus. The major championships, I think it's a great major lineup that you talk to anyone from a US Open standpoint, and they'll talk about Oakmont perhaps being the most classic US Open venue, the truest difficult test. So we're going to get that this year. Quail Hollow, we see it all the time, but we're going to see it. We know the course. We're going to see it from a PGA Championship perspective. That was a great PGA in 2017. And Royal Portrush, I hope that Rory doesn't miss the cut this year, right? Like, I hope that the Rory that we got in the second round last time around, we get the whole time, because that can just add to these theatrics this year. So I'm excited for a lot of things. We haven't talked about TGL, but I think TGL has added some extra excitement, extra storylines, extra talk. I think the biggest thing that I think people are missing about TGL is that it's only about 2.5 months of a season. And I think there's this feeling like, oh my, this is in our lives. This is going to be in our lives this year. By the end of March, TGL will be wrapped. By the time that first tee shot is hit at the Masters, TGL will be over before major season gets here. So it is going to be, I think that's good for TGL, that it's going to be a little bit of a sprint in a good way, and keep people indoors warm and entertained on Monday, Tuesday nights in January, February, March, and then, really help that momentum into major season.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up TGL. I think TGL, to your point, has been a very welcome bonus to the early part of the PGA Tour season. Like, I think it has a ton of potential. Like, I think I think a lot of people will tell you there's still a lot of progress they can make and things they can change to get better, but it's still so early in this thing. I'm begging for a competitive match next week. I think it's impossible to judge the thing until you actually see it maintain competitiveness throughout. But I mean, you can't deny that the facility is. I mean, you've been down there, right? At live at SoFi. I'd love to hear your thoughts on actually being in that place. It looks unbelievable on TV.
Yeah. So, quick context: I've done some work for New York Golf Club. There's 6 TGL teams. There's 1 New York team. Tough week 1, but I did some. I was at their media day. Did some interviews for them at their media day in New York. CC Sabathia and Eli Manning were also there. And then I went down and I taped some stuff for New York Golf Club in SoFi Center before the first match. I went to the first match, and then the next day I was part of a group of influencers and media that came in and actually was able to play on the simulator, on the greens, chipping around the greens. We were not allowed to hit bunker shots. I almost did, and they came out to make sure that I didn't. So sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, it was an awesome experience. And my biggest thing that I'll tell people about TGL, and I worked, like I said, in esports. I worked for the NBA 2K League, which was the NBA Esports League for a while. And with that league, I think if anyone, Ted Leonsis, who I think is a great businessman, owner, man, he said something that he didn't need to say, which was that one of our gamers could become as popular as LeBron James down the line. And the fact of the matter was that was not going to be the case. Fans are going to come in and watch a basketball esports game because they love basketball or they love playing the game, but it's not going to be bigger. The NBA 2K League was not going to be bigger than NBA 2K sales, and it wasn't going to be bigger than the NBA. And I think people need to realize with TGL, it's not going to be bigger than the PGA Tour, and that's not what it's trying to be. It's not going, the ratings shouldn't necessarily be the same as the Masters on a Sunday, but this is adding something to golf, adding something to sports, adding something that other sports can't do. If the NBA could do a 2v2 league where your teammate isn't necessarily your regular teammate, they would do that in a heartbeat, but they can't do that with travel and logistics. If MLB could do, they used to actually do a home run derby series years ago, look back at the old Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays clips. If they could do that, they would 100% do that right now. So what golf is doing is an opportunity that they have because of how fluid players' schedules are. It's going to add some context, add some fun, add entertainment, and we'll see where it goes. But if people are expecting it to be as big as the PGA Tour, as big as major championships, that's not going to happen. So people need to keep their expectations to the legitimate point that this league is setting out itself to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think a big part of that too is like they're still trying to figure out like what this thing even is. Like I'm sure they're having so many conversations between matches about like how can we change this, how can we change that, like what audience are they really catering towards at the end of the day. But in my mind, I think it's a big success if you even have some people who tune into TGL and then they watch any golf moving forward, whether it's a major, a regular PGA Tour event, and just remember someone like, oh, Matt Fitzpatrick, I remember him from TGL. Or Cam Young, another name that's not gigantic, saw him in a TGL match, something like that. And if it at least gets people to care more about guys that maybe haven't really exploded to that top level of PGA Tour popularity, but because they see them in a more personable way in TGL, maybe it sticks in their brain a little bit. But you got to tell me, man, what was it like hitting on the thing? Like I've heard everybody talks about the grass and it's unbelievable. I need details.
So I think that obviously the big conversation that a lot of people have is can you miss the screen? And I think that standing over it where you hit a driver, which is 35 yards from the screen, the farther back tee box, I looked at it and I said, they're not missing. I mean, it's so big when you're actually there. You really need to toe or heel one, which could have happened to me when I was hitting. So I was definitely focused on making contact. I hit 3 shots into a par 3 in terms of a closest to the pin competition, which was from the hole was 103 yards. It was from the 20-yard tee box, 20 yards away. And then the 35 yards is where I hit 3 tee shots. And I'll tell you, like, if I was there for a longer amount of time, I would have tried to shape some shots more. But I was saying, just try to hit it straight. Like, you don't want to be the guy.
The club face.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy that tries to hit a cut and ends up shooting a hosel rocket. Like, just try to keep this on the center of the club face. And if it ends up on the green or ends up on the fairway, fantastic. So that was how I felt. I thought chipping and putting was, to me, more interesting just because I didn't know what to expect. And for me, I'm a bad chipper, but I was clipping balls great off the turf. Apparently, some of the players have mentioned that it's a little hard to get some spin on the ball because if you're chipping off the turf in this fairway cut in the turf, it's not real grass for chipping. It's real grass for hitting drives and approach shots.
Oh, okay.
You get a great lie and you can kind of still get under the ball, right? If you're not a great chipper, you can end up having to pitch off a tight lie on a real golf course and thinking, I don't think I can clip this ball. But the turf, I actually felt like I could get under, maybe not spin it, but I didn't care as much as spinning it as the pros did. Putting, I really didn't feel like I was on turf. It really does feel like you're putting on a green. So they've done a really good job with that. You don't feel bumps or any sort of change in that grain. Obviously, the stimp is going to read consistent throughout. They're not trimming these greens. So that's probably the one unique aspect of the green that they'll have is it's going to be the same speed throughout the whole season.
Got it. Okay, that's interesting. I thought the grass around the green complex was real grass, not turf. I didn't realize that.
So that's turf. The mats are real grass. So when they're hitting off the fairway cut, off the rough, and the bunkers are real, and the bunkers are real around the greens. That's not fake sand. Those shots, anything outside of 50 yards is going to be off real. I don't want to say real turf to be confusing, real grass or real sand, but inside of 50 yards, they are chipping and pitching and putting on turf.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. And then how did you watch the match on Tuesday from home on TV?
I did, yes.
So how would you compare the in-person viewing experience versus the production on TV?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the in person. I'll say, I mean, electric. And you talked about maybe kids watching. I saw some kids in there waving towels and really getting into it in a way like they're at a Knicks game, which I thought was awesome. In terms of how things move in there, it's obviously faster than a real golf competition. If you're at a traditional PGA Tour event, you see approach shots on the hole that you're on, and then you have to wait for the guys to walk on up to the green. Here, they hit those shots, and then they're right into the next shots. So I felt like that was um, important. Not as quick necessarily as an NHL game, but still quicker than being at a regular golf event. On TV, it felt even quicker, and maybe that's because they could talk or do a quick hit or show a quick graphic in between shots. But I was thinking at one point, I had just eaten dinner, and my wife and I were sitting watching, and I wanted to go just rinse off the dishes and put them in the dishwasher. And I kept saying, just after one more shot. And unlike, right, you're watching a PGA Tour event, you're watching the leaders on Sunday. I'm not talking 18th hole. I'm talking they're on 7. They hit their approach shots. You go, all right, I'll come back to see the putt. There's no time to do that unless they go to commercial
Yep.
here, which is essentially between holes. That was my biggest takeaway watching on TV, was that the action was so much quicker that first hour went by so much faster than I could have imagined.
Yeah, I mean, I during the opening match, I was so, and I knew it was going to be fast, but I was so caught off guard by how fast it really was. I was like, is this too fast? It's just coming at you so quick. I thought it was like hard to follow, but I think to your point, it's just such a contrast from what we're used to seeing on tour. Where once you accept, like, okay, this is how the cadence is going to go, then it's like, okay, this is a really great good pace, I think.
And one thing you do notice when you're there is as soon as they finish that hole and they start walking back to the tee, the green starts spinning and they start
Oh,
working
that's
on
cool.
the undulation for the green, right? So you don't see that on TV, but right away while those guys are hitting the next shots, they're resetting the green complex for the next hole, the next attempt.
Is are like is there like human involvement when they go out there and move it, or is it just like the things
It's
underneath and it spins?
it's the actuators underneath. I forgot if it's 60 or 600, so don't
I
quote me
think
on that.
600. Yeah.
600. And they're changing both their spinning and changing the undulation. So to my understanding, the whole designers did need to factor in, like, we can't move the bunkers around, right? And we can't move, like, there's a big mound on one side of the green that is always going to be a part of, there's always going to be one area of the green that you don't want to miss over because you're basically
Okay.
dead over there. And the players, we haven't really seen it yet, but there's a big mound on the green. We saw Matt Fitzpatrick week 1 pitch into the mound and bring a ball back off the mound. He was on the opposite
Yeah.
side, but we haven't seen players actually behind it yet. That's where things could get really interesting. But the designers were told basically you need to have the bunkers in these places and this mound in this place, but you can spin the green wherever you want, and you can work on the undulation of the green to a point in terms of where you want the run out to be, where you want where you want maybe to the green to feel more like a turtleback sort of green. They could work with that.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. Well, anyone who's listening and hasn't tuned into TGL yet, I think it is 1000% at least checking out and giving it a shot, because like we've talked about, like, there is so much cool stuff they can do with it. I think the league has a ton of potential. But coming back out of the virtual world of golf, I know do you still live in New York? I know you grew up in the New York area. I know you partnered up with New York Golf Club.
So I'm from Westchester County, from Mamaroneck, New York, down the street from Wingfoot, Quaker Ridge around the corner too for the diehards. Um, Lived a lot of after I went to Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois for college. Spent most of my 20s in New York City, in Manhattan, and I just this past May moved to Hoboken, which is technically New Jersey. So for those who want to, get really into the geography of it, but still right in the New York area. So easy trek for me to get to Newark Airport and fly around the country, which I need to do right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know Hoboken well. I have some friends who live there. What's that? We always go to that one pizza place that's like right there when you come up from the
There's
train.
I mean,
I'm gonna butcher
Basil's
what
Basil's
yeah,
pizza,
Basil.
Basil.
Yep,
Yep,
that's it. That's
yep.
it. Spent
There's
many
a. I was gonna say there are a lot of pizza places in Hoboken for sure, but yes, you're right near the train station.
yeah. Well, tell me then, since you spent so much time living in New York City, what's your favorite? I think we both had Sev from Course Maps on our
Yeah.
respective podcasts, and he has that awesome series of playing all the courses in New
hmm
York City. What is your favorite course in the New York City limits?
In New York City, oh, that's a good question because Sev played a lot of courses that I've never played or didn't even know existed. But I would say so. He did play Split Rock, which is a little bit of a standard answer, but it's the one that I've played the most in New York city limits, which is in the Bronx, kind of really at the end of New York City, almost in Westchester. But I think that's for anyone who's coming to New York and just wants to play good, affordable public golf. It is a very standard course. You don't get crazy undulation on it, but it is well kept, legitimate golf. And I think is kind of that, it sounds boring, but to me, it's a great sort of where I need to be, right? We see too many people who tee off on tee boxes too far back than they really should. I play a course like that. I'm like, all right, this is a good middle ground for my game. I haven't played Ferry Point, but I want to do that soon because the views are outstanding. It's a little on the pricier side, but Sev actually did a good video. We're talking about Sev Size, by the way, Course Maps, who did a video not just talking about playing Ferry Point, but I believe he talked about the practice area that you can get that people go just to practice at Ferry Point. So I'll throw that out there. But I just want to say Bethpage Black isn't technically in New York, but that would probably be my favorite course and my favorite deal, especially for a New York resident.
Can't beat
In
it.
the entire, you can't beat it. And I think I've played Bethpage for like $59, which is
Woo.
where they're going to play the Ryder Cup. And that was a couple of years ago. It might be a little more for a New York resident now, but I mean, it's the best. And I'll tell you, I would love to get out there a bunch this year, maybe even film some content out there. It's going to be the most in demand golf course in the world this year, but it really is worth it. And I've never played well at Bethpage Black, never, not even close. But I still love just going out there because it feels, there are courses that some of those, the big PGA Tour or major championship courses, they might not look to the naked eye when you're on the first tee like they're that different than what you're used to. But as soon as you get out there and start feeling the course, feeling whether it be the rough, whether it be the undulation, whether it be the elevation change, whether it be the distance, whether it be where the hazards are placed, you immediately start to realize why these courses are the beast that they are.
100%. I've been lucky enough to play Bethpage twice, and one of them actually was with Sev. And I think everyone talks about the distance. Obviously, it's long as hell, and that's a challenge in itself. Like, I don't hit the ball super far by any means, so you're going to have a lot of three hybrids and three woods into greens. Don't get me wrong, but it just seems like everywhere where you could miss, like the most logical place to miss, there's probably a bunker there, or there's probably some kind of trouble. So the room for error is just so little. But to your point, it's such a fun place to be. I think part of that is that there's no carts. It's just everybody's walking out there. It's very visually appealing despite being like just a parkland golf course. Like I think it's beautiful being out there. There's some parts of it where you can see like 3 or 4 holes at the same time. So yeah, can't say enough good things about Bethpage. What would you say is your favorite course, ever? And it could be something you played regularly, you've played once. What's your favorite course?
So I mean, again, not to be too cliche, but Pebble Beach is as good as advertised. And I played Pebble, Spyglass, and Spanish Bay. Spanish Bay apparently getting renovated,
I didn't know that.
and it's kind of like the alternative hipster thing to say, oh, Spyglass is actually the better experience than Pebble. It's not. And I love Spyglass, but Pebble is just the views, the shots, the fact that anywhere you get, whether it's Pebble or Torrey, where you have the actual kind of the course cut into what you're doing, that you realize that the designer didn't even have to work that hard. They had to work that hard to find where there's a hole here, but they didn't have to change the actual terrain. Like Pebble Beach is so natural in everything about it that when you're playing along the coast, that really is the most spiritual golf experience you can have, I think, feasible in the US. We're not talking about Cypress and we're not talking about Augusta. We're not talking about Pine Valley. We're talking about what is feasible for the average person who can save up in the US. But I'll also add, I'm wearing a Tiari Lynx quarter zip for those listening. And I just came from my honeymoon in New Zealand and I played Tiari South. I actually didn't play the North course, but I think that is about to become a global destination. That whole place is a golf haven. New Zealand golf did not feel stuffy. It felt like, you could be, what I loved about New Zealand is you could be in a cab, in an Uber, and everyone knows something about golf. Everyone plays golf. Everyone is rooting for Ryan Fox. And I just think that was an example of, so Tiari, I played Tiari South, which is Corin Crenshaw. Tiari North is Tom Doak, right down the street from Tara Eady, which is super constricted in terms of members. That is very private. But Tiari, if you can get there, you can get there. And that whole course is cut into the New Zealand coastline. Was the closest I came to Sandbelt golf. And I still need to go to Australia, but that was like, you wonder where you're going to travel to, how often you'll travel to a place. And it made me want to come back eventually. There were a lot of things I did on my honeymoon that were like, that is awesome. Mount Cook. We hiked around Mount Cook. We did this thing in Queenstown. Like, that's great. But that was the experience where I was like, I need to come back here and do this again.
Yeah, New Zealand looks unbelievable. I mean, I some of those courses, like it's true stuff out of like a golf sicko's dream, like getting out there at some point. And hey, like, Bandon is so popular now that they've got the lottery system. I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to get out there at this point, so it might just be a better use of money to ship it over to New Zealand.
Listen, it's probably, at the end of the day, I don't know how much different the price will be if you got some airline miles.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Well, to start wrapping up, I've got two last questions for you. First, we'll do just your favorite golfer.
I can't say Tiger Woods, I guess.
Outside of Tiger.
So I'll say Spieth, even though you said it sounds like we could have a great debate about Spieth. But I think that we've been using the term golf sicko over the last few minutes. And I think he is the ultimate golf sicko among pros. Like, I think how relatable is it? Despite Jordan, when he won the 3 majors early on, he didn't blow you away with power, didn't blow you away with an arrogant personality. It felt like this guy who is still trying to fine tune everything and goes home and just looks in the mirror and can't believe all the bad shots he hit that day. Right. And that always has felt incredibly relatable to me. And like I said, it's why I want to see one more Spieth run where he gets the crowd going again. I saw something comparing TV ratings for Hideki Matsuyama's win this year at the Century versus Chris Kirk's last year. And it was like, Hideki's win ratings are down from when Chris Kirk won. I'm like, with all due respect to Chris Kirk, the ratings were what they were last year because it looked like Jordan Spieth was going to win for a lot of that Sunday. So I still think that Jordan, as I've mentioned a couple of times in this podcast, is not the needle like Tiger, but him and Rory are needle movers, and that's why he's important.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I may be a Spieth hater, but it is definitely a very relatable brand of golf. And even though like I'm not a big Spieth fan, I want to see him, rise to the top of golf again, because I think it would be great to see him. And, somewhere I'd like to see JT get back to the top of his game, because I want to see those guys who, were these young up and coming 24 to 26-year-olds. Now they're a little older. Now they've got to deal with a Ludwig or some of those guys. I think that's a really interesting storyline if those guys can find it again. And then last question I've got for you, that has become the question I ask everybody at the end of each episode, is just, why do you love golf, man? Why is it such a big part of your life, and why will it continue to be that moving forward?
I'll put it into two reasons. One, why do I love to play it? Because you're still, it's a game against yourself that you're still trying to get better and better at. I know this doesn't work for other people, but I'm not really interested that much right now, because I don't think I'm that good, in playing competitions against other people. For me, I'm trying to get better for myself. And, I know that every time I tee it up, I'm playing against myself. And I think that while I've played a lot of sports in life, I still have a Monday night pickup basketball game that I'm hesitant to keep on going with, because, at 31 going on 32, I'm starting to look at the guy broke his collarbone in our game this year. Someone tore his meniscus, and I'm thinking, well, I got to get out of this. And maybe I just got to invest more and more time into golf to make that the sport that I'm playing against myself. So I'm trying to beat my own standards every year. And then in terms of why I love to watch golf, which I always like to talk to people about, because a lot of people that I talk to, even though I work in golf media, so a lot of people that say to me, I play golf, but I don't watch golf. Why do you watch golf? And I just think that the drama that is built with golf, and maybe it's slower for other people, but the drama that builds between every shot, knowing there are other players on the leaderboard, everything is fluctuating, everything is unpredictable. A guy could take an 8 on a hole, or he could take a 2 on a hole. You just don't know. To me, that just gets me going, and watching these guys hit shots that, because you play the game, how is this guy hitting his second shot from 275 into this par 5 to set up an eagle? How is he so precise with it? That is incredible, from that human ability. Someone asked me the other day, they said, what's harder to learn to make a tackle as a linebacker, or hit a tight approach shot from like 250? I was like, if you're big and strong, you can probably, you learn a playbook. I had friends in middle school and high school that just picked up football, that had never played as youths, but were like, you know what, I'm just going to go play high school football now. You can't do that with a sport like golf. And so just watching that finesse, that expertise, really locks me in compared to some other sports.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's always like I understand how LeBron can make a step back 3-pointer over a 6'8" defender, right? Like that's something I can't do, but I can imagine how it works. But some of these golf shots that they pull off, and if you really go back in the weeds of like some of Phil's crazy shots or Tiger, like the way they can shape that ball intentionally, not like we shape the ball, like they do things very calculated. It's just so impressive, and it's a level that we just can't really imagine. But I know that I said that was cool. I know I said that was the last question, Jeff. But I'm curious. It popped into my mind. How do bathroom breaks work when you're on the broadcast live?
So the good news for PGA Tour Live, right, is because we're on from the moment the first shot is hit until the end of the day, we go work in shifts. So you're not on from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. We do
You're
get
not doing
breaks.
the Scott Hansen.
No, it's not full Scott Hansen, but there are times, right, where you go in for a 3-4 hour shift. I think that's a big difference between what we do at PGA Tour Live, which, I don't know if people outside quite understand it, but I've gotten to understand it talking to people that work in TV, right? I know guys who do the 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern time shift on Saturday and Sunday on Golf Channel. And that's a sprint. That's 2 hours, right? CBS and NBC will come on the air for a standard PGA Tour event for 3 hours. And that's when those guys are on the air. PGA Tour Live, sometimes we're on the air for, 10 hours a day. We get some breaks in between, but it's a marathon compared to some of the other experiences that are sprints. So I'm going to experience radio now, which is about the middle ground of that. It's roughly about 5 to 6 hours we're on the air. And I will let you know how bathroom breaks go, because I haven't actually done it in person yet.
All right, man. We're gonna need a status update on that. But thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on the show. This was a blast for me to learn more about your work. I think it'll be interesting for a lot of people. Before we wrap up, why don't you just tell folks, if they're interested in hearing more about you or anything, just if there's any links you want to share, Instagram handle, feel free.
Yeah, my handles are all at Jeff Eisenband, JeffEisenband. I'm trying to do a lot more short form social content, especially being on the course this year, trying to show fans a little bit more behind the scenes. My podcast is Eyes on Golf, EISONGOLF. I would say on hiatus since my wedding. But we want to bring that back this year as soon as I'm not on the road. I'm going to be on the road. We're taping this in mid-January. I'm going to be on the road for 4 straight weeks, but I want to start getting back into doing what you're doing when I get back.
Love it, man. All right. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And once again, thank you, Jeff. We'll see everybody next week.